much again for meeting with me and bringing your expertise to our colleagues and our audiences here. I would like to kind you ask you if you can tell us a bit about your work within Europa Nostra Belgium, and of course, if you would like to share some thoughts of your work as a Commissioner General for Heritage Urban Brussels. This is a very open question. Please share.
Yes, but what can I say? In the first place, to help you from your side, I would say you will find a lot of information on already on social media, but certainly for me, Europa Nostra, I would say Oana, which are part of the larger Europa Nostra network globally. The European Voice for Cultural Heritage. So that's founded in 1963, and it operates in a civil society movement and the valorization of Europe's. When I was director of those heritage, intangible, tangible heritage, and contemporary programming. For me, it's not my first focus. I'm coming from the more intangible music, and buildings without people has no meaning. So you need to create narratives. And Eurobarometer, who was presented some few weeks ago, I must say globally, it was interesting data, but data who has no meaning, there is no interest. And globally, there is a danger if politicians knows that 80% of the Europeans says that heritage is something very important for them. There is also the danger of manipulation. So I would say that the global, to be straightforward, I think it's great that Europe knows that its identity is related to diversity of identities related to the heritage building. But at the same time, we have to be careful because Europe is becoming a place where diversity is very important and migration will certainly not stop. With instability, climate change, we will have maybe less in the short term in Romania, but in the West European countries, we have a great form of migration. And it could be also a reality in Romania where people, the last decades, left their country also. And so we see it also as different forms of migration globally. But coming back to Europa Nostra, for me, being this voice for cultural heritage in these contexts from what I was explaining, and very different maybe from what it was in the 60s. And in my capacity as president of, I would say, the Belgian section, I would say I'm focusing, I would say, on three elements. The heritage advocacy and rescue. We identified endangered sites and in particularly all over Belgium and more particularly also in the south of the country, link them with European or international funding mechanism on policy actors. And we were very active. A recent case where interventions where they wanted in a main city in the French community in the south of Belgium, in the city of Nivelles, they wanted to reform a very important monastery in the middle of the city who was had different functions, schools and so on. And they wanted to dismantle this fully place. And we were in the first place as a third actor because there was a referendum in the city where 65% of the people were against of the destruction of this location and the reform. So there we became as a third partner in I would say a form of leadership in coaching, in a support to help the local community. And we are on the winning hand, but we had to do legal. Then the second thing is the policy and awarenesses, where we try to bridge the gap between local communities, political decision makers, and the European level. Europa Nostra is deeply involved globally in the European Heritage Hub, co-funded with the EU, the pilot project of the European Parliament, and we contribute actively to debates on the role of heritage in climate transition, digital transformation, social justice, and so on. And then last but not least, I think the networking will serve as a platform for dialogue between Belgian heritage NGOs, so the whole policy making in Belgium, academic institutions on education, and EU institutions, because we are very privileged that we are in Europe, in the capital of Europe, in Brussels. So we are more privileged than others. Even we could say that everybody is a center in the periphery. So referring to Pistoletto, the founder of the Arte Povera, the center is the periphery. We will never be London or Paris, but Brussels is a very central place. And that also, I would say, for the Balkan or the Southwest Balkan region, or related to where you are situated on the European map. So we often support joint actions as FARO, ICOMOS, ICOM Belgium, and newer actors such as citizen-led heritage platforms. So as for me, my role as Commissioner General for Heritage in Brussels, and this is another element, this is a strategic public appointment linked to the 2020-21 up to 26, and we'll see what will come after that, Biennale, where we mostly work at the ministry on the regional governmental body, and that agency is in charge for what we say in French, régalien, the legal Napoleon Code for what you do in urban planning, and how we can build bridges in between all these more technocratic, legally bureaucratic elements, and now we can adapt that in a more interdisciplinary way between these different levels. And that's I would say, the focus where Brussels, as one of Europe's richest urban archives, when it comes to the early 21st century architecture, but it also faced tensions between preservation, urban development, and social cohesion. So my focus is to first strategically coordinate the Art Deco years and Art Nouveau consolidation to be the Art Nouveau world capital, building on narrative that connects with architecture, with memory and identity, and also with a lot of, I would say, contemporary art to bring that in these new narratives. And as a mediator between citizens, globally, institutions and policymakers, especially in contested heritage cases globally. And so embed heritage in, as a third element, embed heritage in a wider urban challenges. That is climate adaptation, circular economy, and participatory planning in cities, and post-colonial transition. And so in both roles, come back to as a conclusion, one civic and one more institutional, I try to promote a concept of heritage as a living, inclusive, and forward-looking practice, not simply as a nostalgic or an elite domain. That's why I truly admire this work you do, Oana, in linking research, cultural rights, and I would say grassroots practice, what you are doing. So that's a little bit the building with what you are asking me, and the building bridges for what I can bring to your reflections.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Actually, I had additional questions, but you already answered. I mean, this type of platform where you have to put different types of stakeholder, I think maybe is the hardest thing to do, because each stakeholder has their own well, to say interests, mean just in an objective way. And this idea of heritage as a living, I think could be the answer for everybody. I mean, you don't have to, oh, you preserve it because it's like a museum piece, you don't touch it, you are very, very careful with it. But this integration within the fabric, actually, the fabric of the living city, I think this can be the answer. And maybe if you can, of course, you can share a bit how, for example, if you encounter difficult situation with the stakeholders, for example, owners of buildings, of heritage buildings, that I don't know. For example, in Romania, there is well, the legislation is very good, but on the other side, the implementation of it lacks a lot of types of normative measures. So coming back to your experience, how have you handled, if you have encountered this type of situation when people are just business people? They are they just understand their drive. So if you take them to the past, to the heritage, maybe it's not of interest for them, or is it? So maybe you can just a bit tell us.
Yeah, indirectly, you were certainly giving already some answers to that. It's clear that you need a lot of forms of resilience and forms of empathy. The actual implementation of protective measures often clashes, and you said it also, with economic drivers globally, especially in neighborhoods undergoing gentrification or speculation. So let me start by saying that cultural heritage is always negotiated and never neutral. So we must assume that each actor of the state, the developer, the local resident, the cultural NGOs, has different value systems globally, and time horizons. So developers work with short cycles, that's of return on investment, and public institutions with long bureaucratic timelines. That must be the process. And so cultural communities with multi-generational memory, that's where where the tensions lies globally. And in my experience, and there I draw on both urban heritage theory and applied governance practice. And so we need to reframe the conversation with private owners, not in terms of restrictions, but in terms of opportunities. I often say heritage is is not an obstacle to development. It's a multiplier at the end. But to achieve that will, we need, in my opinion, I would say a multi-layer strategy, what we try to apply in Brussels, legal element, a more narrative framing, I think, if I do remember in my work, and a multi-stakeholders. And so on the legal level, we start by making the legal framework clear. That's what Urban Brussels, my employer, is doing. But we also engage in what I would call the adaptive governance. And sometimes we create bespoke agreements with certain rights are guaranteed to owners if they, I would say, comply with cultural or public interest requirements globally. And for example, we have used temporary tax incentives or facade restorations, grants to trigger owner participation. And then secondly, what I said is this narrative framing globally. And so we have to work on changing the narrative. If an owner sees the building only as a commodity, that's also urban historians globally, designers to create a temporary activation of the site. That's very fashionable these days. Globally, these cultural interventions increase visibility. It's good for everybody. And very often, paradoxically, the economic value of the property, we know that. And so real estate developers, they know that, they start to know that. And the term heritage as a soft power is useful here, not just geopolitically, but economically and socially. And then three, the multi-stakeholder mediation platform is fundamental on that. We create urban forums or heritage roundtables on that level, to make these in neighborhoods under pressure. And so these bring together not only owners, but schools, municipalities, planners, real estate professionals, and community groups. And that's inspired recently by what the Commission did, and I could be criticizing that in European bowels, even already in the past, the United Nations Habitat urban diplomacy model. It's something we know already some decades, and we adapt that in the cities of today. And these spaces allow the co-creation at the end, and not the confrontation. So I would say strategic advice for Romania and similar contexts in a country like Romania, where its legislation is solid on paper but fragmented in enforcement. The key is to build on that level horizontal alliance of trust. That means strengthening the capacity of municipality heritage units and empowering civil society and intermediate people who interconnect on that level, who can translate between legal, architectural, I would say, and economic languages. And so, most of all, working with narratives. If people don't believe that heritage at the end contributes to the present and the future, not the past, the present and the future, the unknown, then no legislation will save it. And I believe that what you are doing with your platform, connecting cultural workers, researchers, and institutions, is precisely what is needed, creating a civic, really a civic infrastructure of care around heritage. Heritage is not just a collection of buildings. It's a right to the city at the end. It's really the right to the city, a right to memory, and a right to shape urban future together. That's what I would mean.
Thinking about what you are saying when we are speaking, I think I can identify a main or a major issue in our cities in Romania is about ownership of the buildings and ownership of the city. If you don't find, if you don't think that your city is yours, or that building is yours, the heritage is yours, then your involvement is very small or not at all. So I think you mentioned very well the need to have this gathering, because actually you should be dealing with the community facilitation instruments, actually. So there would be the one of the answers, so to speak. Yeah. I would like to jump, but staying in this idea of copyright and legal frameworks. You have been working and still are, and you are also a member in very many organizations and federations. Maybe you can share with us some of your observation regarding artists, contemporary artists, and their on one part their awareness of their rights and status within a legal framework within European Union, but also their awareness of why not being empowered with a tool that can do more than aesthetics. I mean, why not to take an issue, a global issue like climate change or human rights, and to put it at work within their artistic view. So maybe we can talk about technical awareness, but also a conceptual awareness that you have noticed in your work with artists and practitioners.
That's a book. That's a whole publication. I would say that's policy. It's there are many reports, and Belgium took an important lead on that in recent years. Also in the Belgian presidency of the European Council, the Polish were doing very well in the recent council meetings, and where a lot of reports were written, a lot of data were brought together, and still we have a lot of problems, because I'm teaching at university, and we see that still students, and many students even coming from the East European, Middle Europa, Central European countries, like Romania, Bulgaria, Balkan, South and West Europe, coming to study in Brussels at the art schools of universities. And I'm still not aware that, knowing that we are 9 million workers, to take the data in Europe, and that we are part of the solution in the European GDP. 5% is the European GDP for creative industries, if you take a very large way, architects and so on. And still, from these 9-10 million worker people, you have 1.8 million between 18 and 30. And when they start their career going out of university, of art schools, they have completely lost, and I don't know the right data. You can check with the Polish presidency reports, but I think the last report of the summit in Warsaw was showing that 60-65% of these young workers will leave the world of art because they are not ready for the fragility of their status and not knowing how to work. And so I would say globally, it's very timely and a very profound question what you are meaning, and because it connects, I would say, connects two often separate dimensions of artistic practice: the technical legal awarenesses and the societal conceptual agency of art. And let me address that I would say what I already said in two parts. Both are essential of understanding how contemporary artists function with the European cultural ecosystem today. And so first, the technical awareness of legal rights, status and structural gaps in my work across European platforms, from Beaux-Arts to Cultural Action Europe, and currently as advisors to the policymakers, I've consistently observed that many artists still operate in a fragile legal environment, especially when working across borders. and even fought the EU as directives such as the copyright directives and DSM of 2019, or you remember the portability regulation of 2017. In practice, globally, legal literacy is very low among independent artists and creators. Artists often lack access to affordable legal advice, especially in Eastern and Southern Europe. I told you that. And even they come to study in our universities, there are still not enough awareness that they have to do something. And the fragmentation of legislation across member states makes cross-border collaboration globally complicated, especially in digital projects globally today. And there is still a lot of confusion about reuse, rights, artificial intelligence, generated content, collective licensing, data ownership in digital art forms. So all at I would say at structural level, we must really try to recognize that artistic labor, the work really, is often invisible within national and social protection systems. What we have in Belgium is exceptional, and still that is under pressure. So that's why initiatives like the EU and the European Union Working Group on Artist Status, supported by the Commissioner already Maria Gabriel in the former Commission, and going on now with the Polish and I'm sure the Danish and already with the Belgian, because we were at the leadership, has been so important. However, we now need to go further, even with dismantle again in some countries, building permanent legal support on infrastructure within European networks, and by integrating rights education into every art and design curriculum. It must be, for me, it must be an obligation. And by protecting artists not only from the economic precarity, what we do in Belgium, what still is not all of the place, but from algorithmic, I would say, exploitation in this new age of artificial, with this AI Act, and different organizations are working on that in Europe. So, and a second element is this conceptual awareness, the artist as a civic actor. We see that with the climate change, we see that globally, using art as a tool for reflection, dissident. We see it more and more in a much more aggressive way. And even for healing, the well-being, the whole Call to Action Europe work. And that issue on climate change is important. Artists, one, are not merely illustrating the crisis, they are really prototyping alternatives. And so from speculative design to land art and social sculpture, they often new imaginaries of coexisting. That's very important. And some work closely with scientists, as in STARTS, the STARTS initiatives at the Commission, or with communities affected by ecological violence. And, or I would say, or consider human rights and memory in, I would say, in post-conflict society, artists often play a leading role. I would say, I feel that in preserving contested narratives, especially when official institutions fail to do so. Projects I've seen in Bosnia, Ukraine, the Mediterranean, connect visual art, performance, and oral history to reactive public space as a space of truth. That's a fundamental element. But to do so, this on an effective way, artists need to feel legally protected. Protection, sustainability, freedom, communication meet. We must teach emerging artists not only how to produce work, but how to claim space on socially, legally, symbolically. And that's to bring to my third, bringing it together a vision of artist agency in Europe. And in a sum, I believe really that we need to redefine what we mean by empowerment. And that's not just access to funding, but ownership to frameworks, not only, I would say, access to have an artistic voice. And art must be seen as a vector of globally public intelligence and not merely product. And so an artist must be equipped through the legal knowledge and ethical frameworks and civic platforms, really at the end to shape the narratives of our time, what we are doing today, and not just comment on them. They have to have perspective, and that's why projects like, again, what you are doing also with the stakeholders, Oana, is which combine research, training, and policy insights, are so fundamental, and they can help artists' narratives, the regulatory complexity, and the conceptual responsibility, both that come with practicing art in this 21st century in Middle Europa, in Romania.
Thank you so much for your kind word. Thank you. But we spoke about artists, but what about us, the practitioners? We are not artists.
Oana.
Yes.
Oana.
Yes.
Oana, I see that's 4:10.
You have to go.
You really need to go.
Yeah, sure. We are fine. We are fine.
So we did already good work today. If there's still some questions you would like to add, send it to me. We can still make a Zoom, or I can do it also, give you some answers. Maybe tell me if there was still some things you had in mind, so I can reflect.
Actually, it was only a last question about your teaching, about how can future cultural managers and practitioners understand and not be disillusioned, not feel empowered because they don't know legislation, they don't know how to do public policy or local public policy, and they say, what can I do? And maybe they do something else. So actually, how would you, exactly what you have been mentioning before, how do you make a correspondence between the theory, the concept, the values, and the actually implementation, the grassroots work? How can you materialize, or how you put in practice all these theoretical and concept work so that you can see the results?
I would say absolutely. It's a clear and structured and reflective answer. This, for me, Oana, it's very important in this, I would say, closing for today answer, because it touched directly on how, I would say, we prepare future cultural professionals not just to survive, but to lead and shape meaningful change in society. And often say to my students, cultural policy is not just what governments do, it's what you choose to do. And with awareness of systems. So in my teaching at ULB, in the Faculty of Philosophy and Social Science, I focus personally not only on transmitting theories, but also on showing how these ideas land in the real world. And that's important. Let me show how I approach this to end for me fast in three interconnected ways to be fast. One theory as a compass and not a cage, I would say. And that's I introduce students to concept from political philosophy, cultural rights, urban sociology globally. That's and critical heritage studies, but always framed as tools for orientation and not fixed doctrines. That's globally. And we studied thinkers as Pierre Bourdieu, Martha Nussbaum, to give examples, and Amartya Sen. But we can ask, what does the word capability globally? Capability means in a small cultural NGO globally. What does symbolic capital look like in an understanded heritage site? Theory gives them a language, but more importantly, a sense of why their works matters in democratic life. And secondly, it's for me with the methods of translation, from policy to practice. And one of the biggest disillusions for students is when they realize how slow and messy public policy is. Especially on the local level. So I teach them how read policy frameworks critically on an EU national level, regional, local level, translate strategic priorities on climate, use, cohesion into cultural project design. And use basic tools like logic models, like impact pathway and multi-stakeholders mapping. It's important, solidarity. For example, the analyze of European Bauhaus, European Bauhaus tries to embed values that they were describing, the European Bauhaus. I was always a little bit skeptical, but at the end, how would you apply this in a neighborhood project in Bucharest or in another local city in Romania? And third, as an empowerment through project-based, I would say, scenarios. Finally, I work with real-life case studies. That's important. And design simulation scenarios. Students made role play as culture managers, city officials, a resident, a developer, and so on. That's important to do. And negotiate a cultural space. How to have to write a small cultural action plan. It's important to do that. Based on fictional city-facing social division and heritage conflicts. It's important that they are in that. And this way they connect strategic thinking with empathy and practice agency before entering in the job. And so to your question, how do we stop students from giving up? I would say we do it by showing them that in the field of culture is political, not technocratic. That's for me important, and that even small intervention, if well framed, can have systematic resonance. So when they understand that they are not just event organizers, but bridge builders, narrative shapers, and civic actors, their motivation can shift. So yes, theory, policy, and grassroots work must speak to each other globally. And our jobs as educators is to be translators between these levels, until our students can do it themselves, because they do it better than we will do. So that's to end.
Thank you so much. My hope is back again. The optimist level is up again. So thank you very much, Paul, for your
with pleasure. And yes. I hope we will meet one day.
Hopefully, yes. Maybe we'll meet in the Congress, between congresses and conferences, maybe like that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, and hope to see you soon.